All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. When he works as the bartender, he has improved on his ability to make several different drinks, and the customers all seem happy with him. However, Glenny has a hard time not wasting mixers when he makes drinks due to some of his habits that cause a large mess. These habits include how he holds the different bottles and how he mixes the different drinks. What would be best to target for change to improve Glenny's performance? We have a behavior change question. And when you're looking at behavior to change, you're going to start asking yourself, what about this behavior needs changing? Why am I targeting this behavior? What purpose is it going to serve to change this behavior? So let's think about what we know about Glenny's performance. We know he's a bartender. We know he can make drinks and the customers are happy, but he wastes mixers because he has bad habits, including how he holds the bottles and how he mixes the different drinks. So the first question you want to ask is, do we want to target the function? Do we want to target why the behavior is occurring, or what the outcome of the behavior is? Why does this behavior happen? And that doesn't seem to be an issue. Glenny's getting the drinks made. He is making the customers happy. The behavior is serving a function. It seems to be a proper socially valid function. The problem is Glenny, because of how he's holding bottles and mixing drinks, is he's making a mess. And so we don't necessarily need to change the why about the behavior, why the behavior is occurring, but we do want to change how this behavior looks. So you have to ask yourself, are we going to want to target magnitude or topography? Well, magnitude would refer to more or less the intensity of a behavior. So if we were talking about how quickly he mixes the different drinks or how tightly or loosely he holds the bottle specifically, that would be more along the lines of magnitude. But we don't have those specific examples. We're talking very generally about how he holds the bottles and how he mixes the different drinks. And so what we're really referring to here is topography. So magnitude and topography can be sometimes tricky to differentiate, but remember, magnitude is going to refer to intensity, like descriptions: fast, slow, hard, soft, loud, quiet, these type of descriptors. If we're talking in general about how the behavior looks, that's much more akin to topography. So the behavior that would be best to target for change would be C, topography. Mr. Paul tells his three sons to grab all their gear, put it in the van, and get ready to leave for soccer practice. In response, Mr. Paul's youngest son says, "What color jersey do I need?" How could we interpret the youngest son's response? So we have a verbal behavior question here, a verbal operant question. Few key things to remember about verbal behavior. One, in verbal behavior, there's a speaker and there's a listener. The listener serves a purpose. When the listener speaks, they become the speaker. Two, to understand the different verbal operants, you want to know what evokes verbal operants, what reinforces them, and is there point-to-point similarity or point-to-point correspondence, and is there formal similarity? Those are the keys. If you can know and identify those factors, you should never miss a verbal operant question. So in this case, it's a behavior question. We're looking at the youngest son's response. And so let's find that, because what do we know? We know Mr. Paul told his sons to grab gear, get ready for practice. In response, the youngest son says, "What color jersey do I need?" So if we're looking at the youngest son's response, what could we describe that as? A, verbal listener behavior. This would absolutely be verbal listener behavior because initially, Mr. Paul's son is a listener. Mr. Paul tells him something. Mr. Paul is the speaker, and the son is the listener. And by engaging in it verbally, Mr. Paul's son is engaging in verbal listener behavior. What would be an example of nonverbal listener behavior? Well, this would be like listening skills, right? If Mr. Paul said, "Go grab your gear," and Mr. Paul's son just walked over and grabbed his gear, that would be nonverbal listener behavior. Now, what about speaker behavior? Well, remember, in verbal behavior, we have a speaker, we have a listener. When the listener talks, they become the speaker. So as soon as the youngest son said, "What color jersey do I need?" that son became a speaker. So the youngest son both engaged in verbal listener behavior and in speaker behavior. So how could we interpret this response? We could say D, both A and C. Jolene, a behavior analyst, organizes a meeting with her client's parents and physical therapist to go over treatment plans. It turns out the physical therapist treatment plan is conflicting with Jolene's treatment plans. The physical therapist is willing to listen to suggestions, but is unfamiliar with behavior analysis. What should Jolene do? All right, first thing I think about on this question is there are so many words. It's a long question, there's a lot to think about. When you see a question like this, don't panic, take a breath, and we're just going to attack it like we always do. Let's attack the question. We're looking at what Jolene should do. What do we know about Jolene? Jolene's a behavior analyst, and she's organizing a meeting with stakeholders. It turns out the physical therapist is now conflicting with Jolene's treatment plans, but the therapist is willing to listen to suggestions, but is unfamiliar with behavior analysis. So immediately we can start to think about collaboration. And that's the power of fluency. When you read this question a second time and we understand it, immediately we think, all right, well, we're collaborating. How can we best collaborate? And that's an easier way to answer the question rather than what should Jolene do? So A, Jolene should tell the physical therapist to stop all interventions that are not behavior analytic in nature. Now, that's not very collaborative. As part of a collaboration, it's important that we work with the other team members and we respect their line of work because we're behavior analysts, they're not. Behavior analysis, even though we practice it, is not always going to be the best solution. So A is not collaborative. B, Jolene should work with the physical therapist to help them better understand behavior analysis principles. Well, they could, right? She could definitely start to work on educating the physical therapist who is willing to listen, right? That seems like a good use of time. The more familiar the physical therapist is with Jolene's work, the better. Vice versa, it might be a good idea for Jolene to become familiar with the physical therapist. So B seems more or less collaborative. C, Jolene should move forward without including the physical therapist in any treatment planning to avoid using interventions that are non-behavior analytic. That is also not collaborative. Jolene should not be using non-behavior analytic interventions, but she can certainly support them and she can work with the physical therapist and the other team members. Not working with them at all is not good. That is not what we want to do. We don't want to avoid collaboration. And then D, Jolene should use data to prove that the behavior analytic intervention is superior to the physical therapist intervention. It is not our job to prove that we're so smart or that our science is better than other sciences. Our job is to help the client. So if Jolene has data showing that one thing works and one thing doesn't, that's a different story than intentionally going in and try to prove that her intervention is better. That does not help the client. That does not support the client. It only supports Jolene, and that is not the point. So all that said, what should Jolene do? It's a collaboration question. Jolene should work with the physical therapist to help them better understand behavior analysis principles. Ms. Randall starts asking you, the supervising behavior analyst, about extinction burst. She says she is worried about dealing with these during extinction. What can we tell her that is true about extinction burst? Pretty straightforward question here. It's a must be true question. What is true? And we're talking extinction burst. As always, when we get a term, let's define it. Extinction burst happen as a result of extinction, the temporary increase in the frequency of behavior. Sometimes we'll see aggression. That's straightforward. Extinction burst, we can plan for them, we expect them, and we expect them to reduce after time. So when Ms. Randall says to you or the behavior analyst, how can I deal with these because I'm worried, what can we tell her? A, extinction bursts are expected and we can plan for them. That is absolutely true. We're going to have a plan in place. Yes, they can be challenging, but we know they're coming, so we will be prepared. B, extinction bursts typically are a sign that extinction is working. That is also true. Extinction bursts are a sign that extinction is working. Again, we think they're coming, we know they're coming. When extinction is effective, we expect to see an extinction burst. C, extinction bursts are usually temporary, and then behavior starts to decrease. That is also true. We don't expect extinction bursts to last forever. What we expect is eventually they stop, and then the behavior goes down. So what is true? Well, all of these. Extinction bursts are expected, and we can plan for them. Extinction bursts typically are a sign that extinction is working, and extinction bursts are usually temporary, and then behavior starts to decrease. Jalen looks at a graph and sees several data points. Jalen takes those data points, adds them up, divides by the total, and produces a number. He then identifies that number on the y-axis and draws a line on the graph through the data path that is even with the number on the y-axis. What has Jalen found? All right, kind of an interesting question here. We've got a graphing question, but in word form, basically. We're not looking at data. We've got to visualize what Jalen has done here. So let's think about this. Jalen looks at the graph and sees several data points, right? So let's just do something like this. Jalen has all these data points. We have our data path. Jalen takes all those data points, adds them up, gets a total, and then divides them by the total number, right? Which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he produces a number. Let's just call that 4. That would be his average. So he's found an average of all the data points. He finds that and draws a line. What does that line represent? Does it represent average trend? It doesn't. Does it represent average variability? It doesn't. Specifically, it represents average level. When we look at all the convergence of the data points around a single point on our y-axis, we're looking at the average level. Where do all these data points converge? Going to give us a good idea of how these data points are acting. And so if you just read this question, it might seem confusing, but as soon as you plot it out, it's very straightforward. Kind of an unusual question, but that's okay. It's a good reminder that we still need to know line graphs. We still need to know graphing. It's elementary. You probably are very good at it at this point. You can't neglect the fundamentals, though. It's a good reminder. Always go back to the fundamentals. Thank you for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.